My sister did not extend an invitation to me to hers. If it weren't for the fact that she's now drowning in debt from the entire party, and my parents are advising me to grow up and help her pay it off, it wouldn't sting so much. Definitely not. That isn't going to occur. AmITheA, 24, is living a decent life on my own, one I have created by my own diligence and the help of my fiancé, Daniel. You most likely want to know about my family and the reason I'm here asking questions of online strangers. To put it gently, let me say my connection with them is complex. When the Millers found they couldn't have biological children, they adopted me. Looking back, it was obvious they simply wanted to cover a void. They didn't want me for me. Not to misunderstand, I am not unappreciative. I am really grateful for their choice of me and a better life than I would have had in the orphanage. Really thought about it though, it wasn't all that different. Things were good during the first several years of my life, even excellent. I didn't lack love, hence, that was plenty. It's not that they spoiled me. I was happy as it exceeded what I knew from the orphanage. But about 4 years old, everything changed. My mother magically got pregnant, and I vanished from sight. With the new baby, Clara, my younger sister, they were ecstatic. Though I was glad to be a big sister, from the time Clara was born, it felt as though I no longer lived. It aches. Much. They didn't state it straightforwardly, but it was quite clear they wanted me no longer. I felt as though I had merely been a stand-in until Clara came and seized her own place in the family. My presence felt like a mistake they now had to live with. I felt like a weight, a regret, unchangeable. It was heartbreaking for a youngster who simply wanted to feel loved, wanted, and significant. Though I wanted to remain in touch with them and preserve things as they were, it felt like grasping something that was never truly there, as though I were an annoyance. The more I tried, the more they pushed me away. It's not as though they were blatantly nasty. They still supplied for me, but it was obvious they did it just out of duty. To have a long-lasting influence, they did not have to accomplish much. Enough pain for me was the emotional neglect, the sense of not being welcomed. Even Clara, the sister I so much longed to connect with, treated me like a stranger. She seldom looked at me, and when she did, it was with the same apathy you would show a telemarketer. Growing up feeling like a burden, like none in your family cared whether you were there or not, is a unique sort of hell. You therefore probably know why I began to distance myself from my family when I was a young teenager. That's how things seemed simpler. I was free from concern about bothering anyone, accepting that I would never obtain the love or attention I required from my parents. I spent much time either alone or with friends. I occasionally felt it would have been better if they had never taken me under custody. They seemed to have adopted me simply to pretend as though they didn't care and neglect me. That injured. Not having a family, or having one that doesn't care whether you exist, are two of the worst things I know of. For me, the latter was worse, since I lived in the continual misery of undesired feeling. I thus left home and cut myself off from my family as soon as I reached 18. We still spoke sometimes, but I was not connected to them anymore. I did not cut them off totally, not too far forward to now. I share a different city with Daniel. Things are proceeding nicely. I'm independent and content. My connection with Daniel is solid and loving. Since we started dating 3 years ago, he has been my rock and has bestowed all the love I had been yearning for all my life. Though it has nothing to do with the family I grew up with, I am glad of the life I have created. I see them at holidays. Occasionally, we phone each other, but that's it. I never let me get quite near. To be honest, I'm not bothered about it. I have lately truly embraced it since I am used to it. That does not imply, though, that the vacuum they left in my heart is absent. And that's why I'm here, complaining to a lot of total strangers about my family that hasn't demonstrated affection. Things have lately started to shift somewhat. Now my family is getting in touch with me. Clara recently became engaged to a man called Michael. They want me to assist with wedding planning. My parents have sent texts asking whether I would assist with planning and possibly even attend the wedding. Clara has spoken little, but my parents seem adamant. We need to be united for Clara's big day. They have tried to make it feel like a family affair they want me to be a part of. It wouldn't be the same without me. I'm perplexed and fairly offended. The same family who turned me aside and made me feel inadequate now wants me to take part in something so vital. Since Clara was a little child, I haven't had any meaningful talks with her. She has never shown any interest in me as a sister. Now, I'm expected to present everything as if the years of emotional neglect never took place, but it is more than simply that. I still see them at holidays, but most of my life I have been trying to shield myself from the pain they brought about. Even considering participating in something that can reopen past hurt seems odd. Though we never bonded the way I wanted, we had. I know Clara is my sister, though she doesn't realize it yet. I believe this is maybe her approach to trying to establish a relationship with me. Perhaps this is just what I need to at last live the family I have been yearning for. Maybe this is the means to close the hole in my heart. I am thus caught, and in need of your all-based guidance. Should I use this chance to heal things between us and assist them with the planning? Alternatively, should I keep safeguarding myself, as I have done all this time? If only I could assist, Daniel says. He says it's my choice, and that it might help me to reach back to them. He truly understands where I'm coming from, and has been nothing but patient. Still, I become perplexed about the whole affair. I suppose I just need some guidance on whether I should stay away, or whether this is worth my time. Would you kindly aid me, as it is greatly needed? That's all I can ask. My first post was a couple of weeks ago, and I wish I had positive news. I honestly thought things would be different this time, but now I see I have been a complete fool sitting here enraged and venting to a group of strangers. To be honest, I'm not sure why I let myself sink once more into this poisonous familial dynamic. Perhaps deep down, I yearned to believe my family suddenly valued me, and that I could begin to mend things. Well, spoiler alert, they did not. After posting here, I read the comments for a few days, considering what to do. Many of you were quite sympathetic and understood my situation, which motivated me to give this some thought. Some were even nasty, calling me dumb for even thinking about it. How I wish I had paid them attention. So, as you may have probably anticipated, I chose to assist my family in planning the wedding. Indeed, I should have paid attention to my intuition, or some of you advised to avoid, but I felt maybe this was their means of attempting to get back in touch. Though I wasn't anticipating miracles or a grand, we're family moment, I reasoned that if they were reaching out, some authenticity had to be behind it. Incorrect. Very mistaken. Here's what happened, and it's exactly what makes me so enraged that I have nothing else to do except rant. Things were well for a while. Once I told my parents I was ready to assist with the planning. My parents behaved more sensibly than they had in my whole life. Considering I don't recall the last time my mum hugged me, this was something. She even hugged me when I said I would help. Yes, it was unusual though. Like the emotional fool I most definitely am, it was something I'd been yearning for, and only for this did I let my defenses down. I reasoned that perhaps they were trying to offset years of neglect. I ought to have realized it was too wonderful to be true. The more the plans developed, I even grew close to Clara, unlike before. She seemed to have at last identified me as her sister after all these years. It was nice. But it was at that point that things started to seem really unusual. Clara started asking me for cash. At the beginning, it was minor. A little extra there for decorations. A venue deposit there. She presented it as though she had to pay right then, and had no other choice. That she would lose the reservation. She assured me she would pay me back in a few days, and mentioned she had a large payment due shortly. I did not really give it any thought. I mean, given money was not a concern for me, I had no trouble assisting my sister. Still, a little dubious about the whole situation lurked in the back of my mind. Every time I hesitated, though, Clara turned on the appeal. She told me it was only temporary. She would pay me back shortly, and she truly wanted me to be at the wedding. Years later, at last I was feeling included, as the older sister I always wanted to be, admitting how much I desired. That makes me nearly ashamed. Indeed, I made several large payments. Though monetarily it had no effect on me, emotionally, I continued questioning whether all that was happening was real. Still, I chose to go since I knew I was supporting my family, and this would be my way of aiding my little sister's wedding. The next day, Clara dropped the bombshell once most of the preparations were underway. I was informed I could attend the wedding. She tells me I simply couldn't make it after helping her design this ideal wedding. She said she wanted the wedding to be for blood relatives only, so it wouldn't be fitting for me to be there having been adopted. I started to shock. It was like I had been hit by lightning at that point. Stalled there astonished, I tried to understand what she was saying. Blood family only? As if I hadn't been at her side from the birth. As though I wasn't the one who had just saved them on wedding expenses. All the childhood fears suddenly surged back. That is when I understood they never wanted to get in touch with me or mend things. They were discussing me now that they intended to utilize me. They have always been this way. I was the foolish one who believed things may change. The idiot. I was the one who let myself be tossed aside like trash. I left. Immediately. To my parents or Clara, I said nothing at all. I turned not even once around. I left. I still feel angry. I was enraged. Though another part of me is furious with myself for allowing this to happen, another part of me is furious with them. Better still, I should have known. I need to have followed my gut feeling, but rather, I let myself be carried away in some sort of fairy tale, where they at last gave me some attention. I am done. Though one thing I'll tell you. Yes, absolutely completely done with them. Done with their lies. As their forgotten daughter they only recall when they need something. I am currently planning something as well. Though I'm not sure if it will work or not, they won't get away with this. They believe they could treat me like garbage and carry on with their life. Now they will have to pay for it. Once I have my plan in action, I will notify you. Up till then, farewell. Amelia once more. My last update was a few days ago. Hence, let's assume things have become intriguing. Alternatively, karma showed up at last and started doing its job. A few days ago was the wedding. Guess what? My phone has kept ringing since then. Indeed, it is my parents that never stop phoning me. No, they are not phoning to apologize or discuss how horrible what Clara did was. Actually, they want me to help them. Just why? They believe it's my responsibility, since apparently Clara is neck-deep in debt. Recall I stated that following the blood family-only disaster, I was organizing something. Well, I reasoned that Clara would have to pay for her acts if she intended to utilize me and then trash me. I thus went and canceled all the reservations I had made for her wedding, after cooling off sufficiently to act. Each and only once. The payments, the deposits, all. Though some of my money was refunded, naturally, I did not get everything back since some items were not refundable. Still, I had no interest. To witness Clara struggle with what mattered most to her at that very moment, her ideal wedding, that was the cost I was ready to pay. Once I called off some of the more crucial events, the entire thing came apart, and all of it collapsed fast. Clara started rushing to straighten everything at the last minute, as soon as she understood what I had done and saw her wedding preparations coming apart. She had to pay far more than I had first paid, since everything was so hurried. Desperate, she ultimately borrowed a large loan to pay for everything. She thought she could play me and get away with it. Hence, she is drowning in debt now. The wedding was, quite naturally, a total fiasco. Indeed, it was a respectable wedding, but nothing compared to the ideal celebration I had helped design for Clara. From what I've heard, the wedding was, from last-minute and hurried preparations, a complete circus, and Clara was embarrassed. Ultimately, though, she married. That's what counts at the end of the day. Apart from her enormous debt right now, my parents have not ceased calling me either, trying to make me feel guilty once more so I might assist her. They persist in arguing that Clara is in a difficult circumstance, and that I, her older sister, have to look after her. Yes, really. Where throughout her wedding was that older sister responsibility. Oh right, she isn't blood, hence she wasn't invited. I chuckled when they advised me to let go of the past and be the more mature person. I told them I'm not a doormat they can walk over when it would be most convenient for them. Clara is the one who started this whole mess. She was mistaken to believe she could get away with using me. Besides, I advised them they ought to seek a blood relative, and with that, I hung up. To be honest, it's nice to at last advocate for yourself. I have been the neglected one, the outsider, the one they only look for when they need something, all my life. Now, though, they understand I'm not going to put up with it anymore. Clara now finds herself buried in debt, and my parents are continually pleading with me to assist her. Still, I have no interest. I've dealt with their poisonous actions. Let them negotiate the mess they produced. It is not now my concern. That's probably my tale, as I'm loving this peace with my fiancé, and at last I have some closure in my life. Well, other than the phone ringing non-stop, the block button is for this exactly. Still, thanks everyone for your support over all this. Just when you thought it was finished, I never believed I would be writing this update, but here we are, a few days after the last one, all because my sister has descended to fresh lows I never knew existed. I felt I was done with all this after everything, but naturally Clara had other ideas, and wouldn't let me leave so readily. Clara may have been enraged with me when I turned down her debt assistance, attributing the circumstances she found herself in to me. She thus made the decision to go even farther and disturb me more often. terrible concept. She felt she could exact retribution on me in her warped mind, and honestly, it's funny how poorly it all worked out for her. A few days after I turned away from helping her with her debt, Clara sent a lot of bogus pictures to my fiancé, Daniel. She told him she was so sorry her sister had done something so dishonest and broke his heart. She had the gall to tell him she had witnessed me cheating on him the night before. She even went farther and admitted she felt ashamed to be connected to a cheater like me. The lengths this woman went to, all in want of small retribution for something she brought about personally. She even related a ludicrous narrative about how she had always wanted the best for me, but could not endure seeing me lie to him. You see, she felt she had played her cards nicely in her head. She was a fool, though, not knowing my fiancé or the trust we have. Consequently, Daniel came directly to me as soon as he got those pictures. Not because he believed them, clearly, but rather because we both observed how pitiful this all was, and how petty she was acting, and we laughed as well. Why do you wonder? Well, I was at home with my loving fiancé all night on the night in issue, purportedly cheating on her. I left the house hardly at all, just once. Knowing very well that what this was a frantic attempt to undermine our relationship, Daniel and I were watching a movie marathon. We thus laughed, the only sensible action we could have done. We laughed a lot, as it was obvious Clara was dragging me down with her. Here, though, things get intriguing. I felt a wrath inside me even while we were laughing at the whole circumstance. I mean, I had to put this woman in her place, and she was trying to ruin the one decent thing I had in my life. She stopped messing about with me. Once, and once only, I wanted to provide her one last lesson. Don't get me wrong, I didn't first intend to do this, but Clara left me utterly without other options. The truth is that I kept something to myself, until recently throughout the wedding planning. Clara was kissing another man. She was indeed kissing someone else than her husband. I even started photographing, not because I intended to destroy her wedding or her future marriage, but because I felt something was amiss. Thinking it was not my position to get involved, I silenced everyone at that point. Now, though, Clara sought to sour my relationship. Why should I give her nuptials any thought? I then informed her husband, Michael, of everything, and forwarded the pictures to him. The man acted without a second thought. Clara was kicked out of the house at the end of the day, and Michael filed for divorce, or annulment, or another unknown. At least I know, though they won't be together. Look, as I said, Clara left me absolutely without options. I'm not particularly proud of this. She was the one who initiated this. I simply closed down the entire circus, and right now, Clara is practically destroyed. She tried to go back to our parents, but even they didn't want her since they knew she would be buried with debt, and they would be the ones footing the bill since she doesn't work. They want nothing to do with her disaster. Where then is Clara right now? I am unsure. She's out there someplace, cohabiting with some impoverished person without a knowledge of what they are entering into. To be honest, though, I hardly give a damn. She wanted to play with fire, and I carried her a spray of napalm to provide the heat she so craved. First of all, my sister Clara has learned a great lesson about not interfering with me, but this does not mean she has learned to behave politely with the rest of the world. She seems to have a limitless ability to be in trouble, and today, she has chosen to target our parents. Clara came to see she was in a far more complex situation than she had thought after her husband asked for a divorce. She not only has the enormous debt from the wedding, but also has to quickly find a job to pay off that debt and just keep afloat. She always had our parents or her husband supporting her, so she lived comfortably for years, free from concern about things like employment or financial management. She is now, however, confronting a reality she never would have imagined, having lost the backing of both. Here's where things become even more ludicrous. Instead of accepting accountability for her life, Clara has chosen to sue our parents. You are indeed reading correctly. She is claiming money from them, and the explanation is so ridiculous that depending on your perspective, I guarantee you will chuckle or become enraged. She said that since their biological daughter owed it, our parents should have paid for the whole wedding. Based on Clara's reasoning, everything pertaining to her happiness, including her marriage, is our duty, since our parents chose to have her following years of infertility. Though in her thinking it must be a great idea, I know it sounds absolutely ludicrous. She believes she is in debt since our parents pushed her to seek for money for the wedding, as if they were accountable for her mistake. She is essentially suing our parents to recover the money she borrowed. Reading the lawsuit, I can only imagine the judge's response. I would want to be there just to witness the look on his face as he negotiates this weird family history. Only repressed laughing at the ridiculousness of the subject seems like a possible result. Not our parents, but she was the one getting married. If she wanted an elaborate wedding, she should have paid for it, or at least made wiser decisions. We also wouldn't even mention that she most likely wouldn't be in this position in the first place if she hadn't cheated on her spouse. Of course, though, Clara's thinking sees us all accountable for her poor choices except hers. Of course, Clara isn't only asking them to pay off the wedding debt. That's the ironic thing. She's implied that she wants our parents to take me off their will, something which at this time I couldn't give a damn about. Since I want nothing from this family, honestly, I'm not interested in what's left of them when the time comes. Having worked hard to create my own life, I am content with what I have, far from this anarchy. Here I am then, seeing my sister dragging everyone around her into her spiral of troubles as she keeps plunging farther. And the only thing I can think of is thanks. I'm not part of this circus, like I'm observing from the sidelines as the monkeys go crazy. The narrative apparently never finishes. Clara disproved me just when I believed I had witnessed the height of stupidity. Again, she apparently filed no complaint against our parents. Some of you inquired, and the result was more than clear-cut. A court considering such a case seriously is not something I can picture. That does not mean, however, Clara has given up on bringing everyone else down. She leaves devastation wherever she goes, like a tornado. And the most recent object of her anger? My folks. Desperate following her lost case, and with the avalanche of debt hovering over her, is Clara. She needs money now as well as later, and who better to squeeze than the individuals she believes owe her a lifetime of luxury and happiness. She has been relentlessly insisting they pay up her obligations. She contends that since they underfunded her lavish wedding, they bear some responsibility for her financial disaster. Though it's an absurd concept, Clara seems to live in a world where personal responsibility and reason have no place. To their credit, my parents are at last seeing Clara for who she is. They have become tired of her continual demands and emotional manipulation. They have even begun to confess they might have spoiled her and kept her free from the repercussions of her conduct, therefore supporting her behavior. Though little, that is a step in the right direction. Perhaps, just possibly, they are at last learning from their errors. For me, the calm and quiet are great. Daniel and I are organizing our own little private wedding for those who truly love us. We are creating a life free from the drama and poison of my family. I intend not to get in touch. I haven't spoken to my parents or Clara in weeks. Cutting the cord at last is freeing. I am not driven to correct things or get approval anymore. Surrounded by kind and encouraging people, I'm happy with the life I've built for myself. I will so also be leaving this narratiera. Anger, fury, and a little of sweet retribution abound on this crazy voyage. Eventually, though, it's a tale about discovering freedom and selecting your own family. I appreciate everyone that has supported and followed along. To those who are experiencing similar family situations, kindly know that you are not alone. Your kind comments and encouragement mean the world to me. You are able to break free and lead a happy, loving life. Let nobody tell you otherwise. Story 2. I'm 32, just engaged to Alex, 35, and what should be a wonderful moment has already become a stress-filled nightmare. Since 4 years ago, we have really enjoyed a wonderful connection. There are no serious problems. We get along well and have always agreed about crucial matters. But now that wedding planning has begun, my family is complicating matters as usual. A little background. My family follows somewhat conventional customs, like large family get-togethers for every holiday sort of conventional wedding. For any significant milestone, they have always staged these large-scale events. Weddings are for us like a family holiday. A few years ago, my older brother was married. His wedding was essentially a citywide affair with over-the-top banquet spanning several days. Think 200 guests. Right now, I am dealing with such kind of expectation. Alex, on the other hand, is from quite another background. His family is modest and somewhat laid back. In all they do, they appreciate simplicity and closeness. Alex made it abundantly clear from the beginning that he wanted our wedding to be modest, maybe only 50 people. And I really agreed as well. To be honest, I have never been into the entire grandiose, showy wedding scene. It's simply not me. Thus, when we started to organize something that felt particular to us, something that wouldn't fit a circus, we were both eager. We began with the guest list, and both agreed on confining it to just close relatives and friends. Not too wild. The plan called for a modest, private ceremony, then a laid-back celebration. Though I was feeling okay about it, everything started to spin out of control as soon as I notified my family. First to jump in was my mother, whom I love greatly, but can be somewhat demanding. She was already discussing guest lists, venues, and how can't possibly we have less than 200 guests at the wedding before I even finished informing her about our engagement. At first I attempted to dismiss it, but she wasn't kidding. She sees in her thoughts a great, lavish celebration, essentially a repetition of my brother's wedding. She seemed to not even hear me when I mentioned Alex, hence I want to keep things modest. After that started the emotional manipulation, the card my mother likes most for playing. She begins discussing the need of honoring family traditions and how my grandparents would be so let down if they were absent for the biggest day of my life. I understand and am in line, but this is my wedding. At first, I knew not even how to react. How do you fight with it without coming across as a horrible person? Not enough. Then my older brother decided to interject with 2 cents. He had the large wedding, hence clearly, he knows best. He began talking on how it's family tradition and that I would regret not hosting a large party. He is already, of course, volunteering to help with its planning. He will take over, and before I know it, I will be walking down the aisle fronting 200 people I hardly know. Alex is standing solid in meantime. From the beginning, he has been really clear about what he wants. A small, intimate wedding. He doesn't enjoy being the center of attention at a big occasion, and to be honest, neither am I. We have discussed it a lot. I absolutely agree with him. Now, though, I find myself caught. I don't want to let my family down, as they are urging for this grand celebration, but I also want to make our wedding something Alex finds overwhelming and impersonal. The real blow came when my parents volunteered to pay for most of a bigger wedding's expenses. I am thus under considerably more strain now. They seem to be trying to purchase their way into their desired outcome. I'm feeling caught, even though they mean well. If I say no, I feel bad, and as though I'm not appreciative. If I say yes, though, I'm violating Alex's preferences and what we decided upon. It's one thing after another. Alex is beginning to become irritated as well. Though I can tell it's taxing on him, he has been patient. Every time my family talks of the wedding, it always centers on the guest count, the location, and all these other things we never wanted. Our wedding vision seems to be buried under their demands. Last week we had our first major fight over it. Alex charged me with not defending my family. I feel like I'm caught between a rock and a hard place, even when I understand his perspective. Though it's becoming difficult, I want everyone to be happy. To cap it all, word is going to the broader family. Now I have relatives and uncles calling to wish us well, and they all assume there will be a large wedding. Rumors regarding possible locations and caterers even exist. How it fast escalated, this is unknown. Like my wedding is becoming the next major family gathering, I haven't even had any input yet. I feel pressurized right now. Last weekend's family supper included a passive-aggressive remark from my mother about how selfish couples these days don't think about their families when planning weddings. Knowing it was aimed at me, I felt the tension in the room. It was quite awkward. I had no idea what to say. Thus, here I am looking to Reddit. Has anybody else experienced anything similar? How do you manage familial pressure while working to arrange a wedding fit for your partner and you? Any guidance would be much welcomed, since right now I am lost. Since my last post, things have only gotten worse. I'm beginning to feel as though my own wedding is out of my hands. More family members started getting involved as soon as word of our engagement leaked out. One of the first to leap in was my aunt, a wedding planner, by the way. She called me out of the blue to congratulate me on the engagement and to offer to help. I assumed she intended to offer a few suggestions or guidance. Definitely not. She wanted to help by organizing a huge 200-guest celebration. The worst of all is also, before I even agreed to her assistance, she began flitting around ideas. She's then discussing about places with capacity for 300 guests and floral decorations more costly than my whole budget. It was not limited there either. Furthermore, unrelenting has been my mother. Every discussion with her centers on how this wedding will be the event of the year, how she has already told half the family, and how she intends to invite people I have not even heard from in years. The major surprise then came when my mother volunteered to cover all expenses. She claimed to fund Alex's outfit, the flowers, the food, and even more decorations, The whole wedding, she seemed to be hanging this enormous cash offer over my head, gently suggesting that I would be harming the family if I turned down. Are you sure you don't want to make things easier on us all? I could nearly hear her asking. Alex has been losing his tolerance meantime. I see it. Every time we discuss the wedding, he begins to feel as though I am not enforcing family rules. And quite honestly, he is correct. We got into another dispute, and this one became really hot. Should my family not back off, Alex threatened to elope. I hold no guilt against him. This was not what we agreed upon, and it feels as like our day is eluding us. Feeling cornered, I turned to Reddit for guidance. Most people advised me to meet with Alex and my family to establish explicit limits. They indicated a compromise, a modest ceremony with just intimate family, then a larger reception. I mentioned that with Alex since that sounded like a reasonable halfway ground. Though he wasn't excited, he agreed grudgingly to at least talk about it with my family. When I introduced the concept to my mother, though, she totally discounted it, saying, "If you're going to do a big reception, why not just go all out with the ceremony too?" She laughed it off as ludicrous. She obviously wanted nothing less than a lavish, extravagant marriage. She was not receptive to my attempts at reason. Usually quiet in such circumstances, my dad sat there nodding along. It wasn't much, but his quiet felt like subdued agreement of my mom's idea, which increased the strain. Alex is getting more annoyed daily. He believes I'm not defending what we both agreed upon, and he's beginning to wonder if we should even have the wedding at all since it would cause such a pain. I understand his point of view, but it's difficult to turn away my family. I don't want to ruin their great occasion. They are pushing for this. I do not, however, want to lose Alex either. I'm caught. Things went bad when my brother chose to take control without asking me. Claiming he had everything under control, he began phoning venues and photographers. It seemed as though I was no longer even actively organizing my own wedding. He was giving me updates on vendors he had scheduled, as though everything were set in stone. Given his done this before, it seems as though he expected I would follow along. More heated conversations between Alex and me followed after this. Once more bringing up the concept of a courthouse wedding, he said it might be the only way to escape family strife. What to say was unknown to me. On one hand, I could completely imagine us having a little ceremony and working with all this tension. Conversely, I feel bad about not including my family on what should be among the most significant days of my life. Still, Reddit has been my rescue. People have been quite helpful, and the post I created attracted a lot of attention. Most users are pushing me to give my connection with Alex first priority and let the needs of my family rule. Knowing that I am not alone in handling this type of family pressure has been consoling. Reading all the comments, I at last plucked the bravery to approach my mother. I told her about the pressure I have been under, and that, even if I value her wanting to help, this wedding is about Alex and me. She naturally turned the tide, though, acting as the victim. She began to say things like, "I'm just trying to help. Do you not want to bring happiness to your family?" Every time I tried to be firm, she would shame me into back off. She is silently treating me now. Every call has been brief, and she stays away from discussing the wedding completely. The guilt is eating at me, and I'm beginning to worry that this whole thing may permanently sour my relationship with my family. To top that, my relationship with Alex is also under pressure. Although we have always been strong, the pressure of all this is beginning to wear us. Every time we discuss the wedding, I can sense the conflict between us. I am afraid that if this continues, it might really destroy the 4 years of work we have created. What should I do next? I feel as like I am caught between my family and the person I love most, and worry I may lose one of them during the process.